This lesson is predominantly coming from this section of the Bible shown in the highlighted section of this chart. Lesson 25. Israel conquers Canaan. There was one natural boundary to the land of Canaan, and that was the Jordan River. Today, the Jordan River has dried out considerably from the extremely heavy use of the population explosion and industrialization. We must stop and realize that back then, over 1 million Israelites with all their flocks, herds, and children saw a much larger, faster-moving Jordan River at flood stage while it was overflowing its banks. God magnified Joshua in the eyes of all the people to validate his leadership position by miraculously stopping the flow of the Jordan River and allowing all the Israelites to cross on dry ground. The next humanly impossible task was to conquer their very first city named Jericho, which was surrounded by an enormous, thick, high, impenetrable wall. God was about to perform another miracle. God gave Joshua specific orders which were to be followed exactly, regardless of how silly they sounded. Joshua was to command all the soldiers to march around the walls of Jericho in complete silence once a day, led by the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant, blowing their trumpets. On the seventh day, they were to do this 7 times, and on the 7th time, they were all to shout. When this was obeyed, those enormous, thick, high, impenetrable walls miraculously collapsed, and Israel attacked and conquered their city, killing all the inhabitants except a woman named Rahab and her family, who had expressed faith in the God of Israel. This woman wound up being in the lineage or ancestry of Jesus Christ. Thus, God proved that all who turned to him in faith were accepted by him. Joshua conquered and won the battles against all the different armies in the land of Canaan, but it was up to the individual tribes of Israel to annihilate all the inhabitants of the territory they settled in. All types of monuments of idolatry, high places, which are places of pagan worship on high ground associated with human sacrifice and immoral behavior, were to be completely destroyed. Not a trace of these horrible abominations was to remain in the land. Instead of annihilating these residual Canaanites, the various tribes of Israel disobeyed God's command and not only made agreements with them to stay on as servants, but developed relationships with these wicked people and soon worshipped their gods and practiced their atrocities. Israel would suffer for hundreds of years and never fully enjoyed the land that God gave them because of this. Joshua died at the age of 110, and Israel was now settled in the land with each tribe in its own territory as depicted in this map in the different colors. This nation was not set up as a monarchy, but as a theocracy, meaning God was their invisible king. Israel was now to be governed by the God-given constitution, which was the law of Moses, which dealt with every part of their lives. As we shall see in upcoming lessons, sadly, so many times they chose not to be ruled by God. On this map, the southeast or lower right section shows the small foreign country nations of Ammon, Moab, and Edom. God commanded Israel not to conquer them because they were distant relatives of the Israelites. Edomites, shown in the red circle, were the descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother. Moab and Ammon, shown in their respective red circles, were descendants of Lot, Abraham's nephew. However, these nations made the mistake of troubling Israel at some point, and then they were destroyed later on. After Joshua's death, Israel entered another period of their history where they were ruled by judges. This is mentioned in the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 1. The book of Judges gives the sad account of repeated failures and tragic consequences, all because Israel would not be governed by God's constitution. Instead, the Bible says that every man did that which was right in his own eyes. During the period of the Judges, Israel would go through repeated cycles of apostasy and oppression from other nations as the result or natural consequence of forsaking God. In their distress, they would cry to God, who would feel sorry for them and raise up a guerrilla military type leader called a judge to deliver them from their oppressors. Once freed, they soon reverted to their apostasy again. An example of one of these hero-like episodes is the story of Gideon. During one of Israel's many times of apostasy, God allowed the Midianites to oppress the Israelites, stealing Israel's crops and inflicting terror, causing the Israelites to hide from the Midianites. When the Israelites cried unto God, God felt sorry for them and called Gideon to deliver Israel. With Gideon and his small band of just 300 men with no swords or spears, God defeated over 30,000 Midianites by bringing panic and confusion to the Midianite camp, causing them to kill each other. Thus, God proved that great numbers or human strength are not required to win battles when God is fighting for you. During another time of apostasy, God allowed the Philistines to oppress the Israelites. The Spirit of God would come upon another judge named Samson, giving him great strength at times to defeat the Philistines. Samson was not to cut his hair. However, Samson had a weakness for women and often caused himself and others to suffer because of situations caused by bad relationships. Eventually, a woman named Delilah, hired by the Philistines, tricked him into telling her the secret of his strength. After she enticed him and made him sleep in her lap, the Philistines came, and while Samson slept, they cut his hair. While weak as any other man, they blinded him, making him grind grain like a beast of burden. During a great feast in their temple of their god Dagon, packed with over 10,000 Philistines, the Philistines made sport of Samson, and when he prayed to God, God gave him strength one last time, causing him to destroy the entire temple, killing over 10,000 Philistines. But as already stated, Israel kept falling into apostasy. In our next lesson, we are going to learn about another period in Israel's history known as the monarchy. We will learn that the three main offices of this period will eventually be completely fulfilled by one person later in the New Testament. Without understanding these three offices or roles, you may not completely understand the greatness of that one who would perfectly fulfill them in the New Testament. That one who would perfectly fulfill all three offices in the New Testament would be Jesus Christ. Don't skip our next lesson. Until next time, goodbye for now.